Quería justificar el adoctrinamiento dentro de las escuelas sobre temas de hombres que se sienten exageradamente delicados y usan tacones. Sin embargo, la periodista que verás a continuación, cuyo nombre es Julia Hartley Brewer, dejó en shock sus argumentos vagos mediante el uso del sentido común y el sentir de los padres al enterarse de lo que se enseña a sus sagrados hijos sobre estas cosas. Mira el video completo y dime si estás de acuerdo con lo que Julia expresa sobre el asunto.
Hey Julia, happy Pride Month.
Yeah, it's not a thing. I mean, that's the thing. I don't acknowledge any of these things at all. I find it all quite bizarre. Many of my gay friends, indeed many of my straight friends, when we go to Pride festivals, fill your boots, have a great time. But what on earth has this got to do with children? And what has drag got to do with Pride as well? Because Pride for me, and certainly I knew, gay men and women of my generation and older, was about it being safe and acceptable and welcome for people to be open about who they were, to come out and live their life freely, and and being able to marry and hold hands with the person they love and not face abuse or violence. And thank goodness we do now live in a country where that is pretty much largely the case. It had nothing whatsoever to do with dressing up in a caricature of female, drag, with fake boobs and nails and hair. What has that got to do with gay pride? I don't know why anyone would think it was appropriate for children when we know that it is different from someone, say, dressing up as a clown or, having someone dressed as a mermaid at your kid's birthday party, because actually a lot of it is very sexualised. We're seeing, certainly on social media, some very disturbing videos coming out of America in particular, where this is being pushed, drag story time. This has no place in schools, in nurseries. I know somebody who's gendered their nursery for their 2-year-old. They've got whole Pride Month. They've got rainbow flag. I don't understand what this has got to do with educating children. When on this day we're marking this, and on this day we're marking that. I'm thinking, when is eating crayons and getting messy in the sandpit day? That's what children should be doing at nursery. Why does this ideology, why does this have to be so, people use this phrase, push down people's throats day in, day out. We say it's Pride Month. It's Pride decade, for goodness sake.
I think crayons and sandpit day should hopefully be every day for children in nursery schools. So yes, there is a certain level of drag where there are adult entertainers who will perform maybe something scandalous or provocative, and that is for an adult audience. Those kinds of events will be running at nightclubs where people will be ID'd to be able to enter. The drag queen in this case, who has been running drag storytime here in the UK, is called Ada HD, and she talks about mental health. Ada HD is a reference to ADHD, and what she is doing is nothing like what you might be seeing if you go to some of the nightclubs in Soho on a Saturday.
No, but we have seen, and this comes over from America, this was not a thing. We never needed people to be in drag to go and talk to our children about mental health, even 5 years ago.
I think actually mental health is something that is being talked about more and more.
I think it's talked about way too much, personally.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that, but I think what I would say is the British history has an incredibly long lineage of drag history. We've got panto dames. Drag can be traced back to the UK all the way back to Shakespearean times. So there is this incredible connection there that we have with British culture, British history, which should be, I think, celebrated. And part of that is expressed in a way of also being able to play with what it means to be who you are.
Yeah, okay, look, and I accept the panto remark, and I accept the history and Shakespeare, I accept all of that. However, isn't it weird that until the trans ideology started dominating everything in our culture and our education the last few years, that this wasn't a thing in our schools? If it had been a long part of our history, you'd think that that would have been something that had crept in somewhere to story time in our schools and our libraries, but it hadn't.
I think that hadn't been the case because of Section 28, which was a local authority act, which meant that local authorities couldn't promote same-sex relationships. That was under Margaret Thatcher, and that was scrapped in 2003 in England and Wales, and it was
but it was exactly. It wasn't actually terrible. Yes, but it wasn't actually. Yeah, I totally disapproved of Section 28 and argued against it at the time. However, that's a small part of our history. You'd think this would have been around for longer. The reality is, there are an awful lot of parents, and I was in my daughter's school only this week at a meeting talking about the PSHE or PHE, I never know what it's called, but the sex education lessons and about what we thought they should be taught about, whether it was sexting, worrying about, violent porn, but also I raised the issue of, what advice they've given and what the discussions they're having on things like trans issues. Because there are a lot of parents who are perfectly open and welcome, who've got no issue at all, their children are gay or straight or bi and really open, who are genuinely concerned that this is now a political ideology that is being pushed, and a culture that's being pushed that is not necessarily a healthy one for our children to know about. It's highly sexualized. It's about mental health. It's telling children that it's perfectly normal to think that you may be born in your wrong body. It's not something I believe that is a thing. We used to talk about this as there were, there were transvestites, and there were people with gender dysphoria who should be treated with care and kindness and obviously receive mental health care. And teaching a whole generation of children from zero at nursery right up until university that actually, you may well be born in the wrong body. If you feel a bit strange in your teenage years, maybe it's because you are actually a boy, you're actually a girl, but you didn't realise that. I don't want my child or anyone else's child told that. I think that's dangerous. I think it's a crime to tell children that is a thing and that's something that is desirable or awful word, but normal, and not treating that as a what it really is, which is a mental health concern for unhappy and disturbed, anxious children. Do you understand why I feel that way as a parent?
Oh yeah, I totally see why you're saying that, but actually trans issues haven't been declared under as a mental health problem, according to the world's leading medical experts at the WHO. And also,
because we trust the WHO. It used to be treated as gender dysphoria. That is the medical definition.
And when women went through the menopause, it used to be treated as hysteria. Things change and things develop, right?
No, but the menopause is... women literally do go through the menopause.
I did let you speak. You asked me a question. I'm trying to... So what I would say is with trans issues, what is happening here is nobody is ever saying you might be trans because you're feeling a little bit funny, but what they're doing is they're allowing people the opportunity to explore their gender and
they're telling them you might be trans. In a way, trust me, I know what's going on in girls' schools.
I was at one not that long ago, and I know what's going on, and it's allowing people to explore themselves in ways. Lots of these things are extremely medicalized processes. You can't just walk into a hospital and say, I want that surgery. It comes with lots of psychiatric and medical...
No, it doesn't. We know what was... Hilary Cass reported the Tavistock, which is the leading gender dysphoria clinic for children in the country. Her report showed that actually, no, children were literally walking in and put on puberty blocker drugs very, very early on, often without parents' consent. They're on a long road to infertility and body...
There is absolutely no evidence to say that puberty blockers lead to infertility.
Puberty blockers are the first start on the way down a very slippery slope towards children disfiguring their bodies and losing fertility.
That's just not the case.
That
That's
is
just
the
not
case.
the case.
That
Puberty
is the
blockers.
case.
Puberty
That
blockers
is the
prevent.
case.
It's not the case. Puberty blockers.
The
Do you know people who have taken?
Goodness me, I've interviewed an awful lot. No, there is absolute 100% evidence that actually once children are started down that route, they are very likely to end up going down further route where they will actually have medication that will lead to infertility and many other issues with their bodies. Look, we could talk for much longer. I'm very happy to have you on the show. Let's do this again. But Shivani Deve, we have to leave it there.
¡Qué ternura la nueva estrategia educativa! Porque claro, nada dice infancia sana como un tipo con pestañas de 10 centímetros y vestido de lentejuelas, enseñándole cuentos a niños que todavía no saben atarse los zapatos. ¡Brillante! ¿Quién necesita abuelas contando historias o maestras con vocación cuando puedes tener a un hombre exageradamente delicado explicando por qué ser auténtico es más importante que aprender el abecedario? Dicen que es por la diversidad, que es para que los niños crezcan sin prejuicios. Curioso que lo digan los mismos que se escandalizan si un niño juega con soldados o dice que quiere ser bombero. Eso sí, si el pequeño se quiere declarar unicornio no binario con 4 años, ahí sí lo aplauden de pie y lo celebran con cupcakes veganos. Y no es ideología, por favor, es arte, es expresión, es inclusión. ¿Cómo se te ocurre cuestionarlo? Al parecer, proteger la inocencia ahora es algo anticuado. Lo moderno es confundirlos lo antes posible, no sea que se les ocurra crecer con sentido común. Pero tranquilos que todo es por su bien, o al menos eso dicen entre aplausos, purpurina y lecturas inclusivas a la hora de recreo.